About an hour and a half. Almost 2
About
weeks.
nine. It's about 90 minutes.
We had Klaus Kinski last week, so we went on and on and on.
Klaus Kinski.
Klaus Kinski.
Yeah, he was here, and
we covered his films last week.
He's dead.
Yeah, I know, but we just covered his
but
films.
not me. I probably bought him at an auction, and he's here next to me.
We showed a bunch of his trailers and posters, and
He was an interesting guy.
He certainly was. Anyway, welcome once again to the Spaghetti Westerns podcast. I am your host, Jay Jennings, and we're here every Saturday to discuss the genre of spaghetti westerns, whether it's an actor, a director, a location, films, we're here or character actors. We cover it all, and we have been for the previous 64 episodes since starting last, I think it was May of 2020. So this is our 65th show, and of course, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the Ed McMahon of Spaghetti Westerns, Mr. Tom Betts. Tom, how?
Hi, Jake. Doing good. How are you? Can't hear you.
Now you can hear me.
Now I can.
So wait a minute. You mean maybe I was muted during that whole intro?
I could hear you.
Oh, you could hear me.
Yeah.
But when I introduced you, I went off. Okay, well, how was your week, Tom?
Good week.
Glad to hear it, Tom. Anyway, so Tom and I are the dynamic duo of spaghetti westerns. We, without the crash, boom, and pow, Tom, that you see on that show. But we just try to bring you our perspective on the genre of spaghetti westerns, and our take is not the end all. You have your own personal favorites, your own personal opinions. Tom and I only hope to enlighten you and maybe introduce you to a film or an actor that perhaps you haven't seen before or heard of, or maybe you missed when you watch their films. I get emails all the time saying thank you about Craig Hill or about Thomas Milian. I didn't know he made that film, Jay, but now I'm going to go check out another one. And I always say, well, besides that, go to Tom's blog, Westerns All'Italiana, which started this whole thing. And now it's, since you took over in 83, right, Tom?
Yeah, about that time, 82, 83.
Right. So everybody search the internet and Facebook for Westerns All'Italiana. It's almost like the podcast version of this show. Anyway, so we have a great combination of actors today. We kind of like to mix it around. And last week we did two actors. Did we not, Tom?
That's correct.
Right. So why not do another two? Kind of a weird combination, but it doesn't matter. But these two actually do have a combination or a connection. They were in they were in a spaghetti western, Once Upon a Time in the West. So there is a connection there. So we're talking about Woody Strode, the great actor Woody Strode, who not only made spaghetti westerns, but he made hundreds of films, Tom, in different genres. I mean, he's in Spartacus, and he's in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. He's in so much stuff, but thank goodness he made some spaghetti westerns.
Yep, he was in a bunch of crime films over there in Italy, and where his career sort of stalled in the U.S., the Europeans loved him. So he was the strong silent type. I mean, if you go over his films, he didn't have big roles, but he was always a screen presence, and that's what they used him for.
Oh, he had a great screen presence with his bald dome and that kind of angry look. But he was a nice man, though, a gentleman in real life.
Yep.
So in the second part of the show, we'll be talking about the great Frank Wolff, with two Fs, Tom, even though some
that's right.
list him with one F. He's mostly known as Frank Wolff with two Fs. Great actor, of course. We remember him from Once Upon a Time in the West. And he's in The Great Silence, and he's in a couple other films that we'll be reviewing. So today we got Woody Strode and Frank Wolff. And so we'll start with Woody Strode, Tom. It's a kind of a lengthy bio, but I'll show some images, and then we'll get to his film career.
Yep. Woody Strode was a Renaissance man. I mean, listen to this bio, and you'll understand why we're saying that. Woodrow Wilson Woolwine Strode was born in Los Angeles, California on July 25, 1914. His parents were from New Orleans. His grandmother was African American and part Cherokee Indian, and his grandfather was an African American who claimed his own grandmother was Creek Indian. He attended Thomas Jefferson High School in Southeast Los Angeles and college at UCLA, where he excelled in sports, playing alongside Kenny Washington and Jackie Robinson on the 1939 football squad. Strode posed for a nude portrait, part of Hubert Stowitz's acclaimed exhibition of athletic portraits shown at the 1936 Berlin Olympics. Strode made his first appearance in film in Sundown, 1941, playing a native policeman. He had a small role in Star Spangled Rhythm, 1942, as a chauffeur of Jack Benny's Rochester, Edward Anderson, and could be glimpsed in No Time for Love in 1943. During World War II, he served in the Army Air Corps in Guam. After the war, he signed with the Los Angeles Rams, and along with his friend Kenny Washington, were the first black players to play in the NFL for many years. Jackie Robinson, Strode, and Washington had all played in the semi-professional Pacific Coast Professional Football League earlier in the decade. Woody joined the Calgary Stampeders of the Western Provincial Football Union in Canada, where he was a member of Calgary's 1948 Grey Cup championship team before retiring due to injury in 1949. In 41, Strode had dabbled, for several months in professional wrestling. Following the end of his football career in 1949, he returned to wrestling part-time between acting jobs until 1962, wrestling the likes of Gorgeous George. In 1952, Strode wrestled almost every week from August to December for different cities in California. He was billed as the Pacific Coast Heavyweight Wrestling Champion and the Pacific Coast Negro Heavyweight Wrestling Champion in 1962. He later teamed up with Bobo Brazil and Bearcat Wright. Strode's acting career was reactivated when producer Walter Meary spotted him wrestling and cast him as an African warrior in The Lion Hunters, 1951. He reached cult star status when he appeared as a gladiator with Kirk Douglas in 1960's Spartacus. He received a Golden Globe Best Supporting Actor nomination. He was given the lead in John Ford's Sergeant Rutledge that same year. His career was to be trapped as a supporting actor with a great screen presence. He went to Italy in 1968 to appear once upon a time in the West and stayed. Here he was appreciated by the Italian directors and filmgoers. Woody's first wife was Princess Luana Kalakaua, also known Luana Strode, a distant relative of the last Queen of Hawaii. You'd have thought I was marrying Lana Turner the way the whites in Hollywood acted, he later said. She appeared next to him in the opening scene of Once Upon a Time in the West as the Indian squaw seen in the Railroad Depot office. In 1980, Strode was inducted into the Black Filmmakers Hall of Fame. Woody died on December 31st, 1994 of lung cancer at his home in Glendora, California. In 2021, he was inducted into the Hall of Great Westerners of the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum. Sheriff Woody of Toy Story series was an animated film is named after Strode. If you really want to see about Woody Strode, get the book Gold Dust, the warm and candid memoirs of a pioneer actor, which came out in 1993 by Woody Strode and Sam Young. It's available on Amazon, but that's his autobiography. It's very, very good.
What a great bio. I mean, think about it. A football star, wrestling star.
Yep.
Within a few couple films, he's in Spartacus, and he almost steals the entire film. As I said, just a great screen presence. But since this podcast is dedicated to spaghetti westerns, we'll be talking only about his spaghetti westerns. And he made a few of them. And there's others, Tom, that we didn't add. I thought we could have added, like The Professionals and The Revengers. Why did you leave those off, Tom?
Well, they're not for spaghetti western, but you'll see a lot of his characters are either gone from the Italian western to the American or vice versa.
Right. I
Keoma,
understand.
he plays George in there, and it's just like the character he played in The Professionals with the bow and arrow. Yeah.
Right. So we just left those two off because they weren't made in Europe, I guess. So
Right.
Anyway, so let's start off. What a great first spaghetti western Woody starred in. Well, not starred, but that he was in. And of course, I'm talking about Once Upon a Time in the West. And we already know this. We've reviewed it many times. And Sierra Una Volta il West It's a classic, probably a top 10 in everybody's list, probably a top 5 or top 3 in most people's lists. We know it's with Hank Fonda and Charles Bronson and Claudia Cardinale and Jason Robards and Jack Elam, Al Murlock, Keenan Wynn. We'll talk about Frank Wolff, who was in this, and of course Woody. Woody's part is, as you know, he's at the beginning, and he's one of the 3 gunmen that comes to meet Charles Bronson at the train station. A nameless harmonica player played by Bronson, I guess, meets them there. And I mean, we've already reviewed this. We already know there's land, land that's up for grabs, and Frank Wolff, will be talking about later, is killed. And so a railroad baron, played by Gabriel Ferzetti, wants it, and he uses Hank Fonda as his henchman to, I guess, seduce Claudia Cardinale, who is the widow. And it's just, we've reviewed this, so I'm not going to read from it. But Woody is great in it, of course, as one of the 3, gunslingers or hitmen at the beginning. He's first wearing a jacket, Tom, but then he takes it off.
Yeah, then he's got that long duster, and then you always remember him standing under the water tower, letting the water drip on his hat, and he almost goes into a trance. And then,
Yeah, he kind
then
of,
when
yeah,
the train comes, he drinks the water and goes back. To
he
join
drinks
with
the water
2.
from his hat, and his eyes go, up into his head, and he's almost in
Yep.
He's like he's in love with killing. So this is like his little ritual: a little water from the hat, and then off to kill harmonica.
Well, he actually gets a shot and shoots Bronson. If you watch it, Bronson gets hit and falls down, and then there's like a missing scene. What happened to him? He recovers. Next time you see him, he's in the laundry.
Yeah, I think there is a missing scene for some reason. I think Leone took it out. You can read about that. But no, if you think, Woody steals the scene. He actually gets the buckshot out of that shotgun and hits Bronson in the left shoulder before, of course, succumbing to Bronson's triple trigger firing that kills them all. But great movie. We already know this. We've reviewed it, and Woody is fantastic. Those 3 gentlemen at the beginning, Al and Jack Elam and Woody, just steal those. Is it like 7 minutes, Tom?
I think so. At least that, maybe 12 from the very beginning. No music, just sounds.
Right, just the sound of a windmill going, and maybe some water from a fountain. Right. So anyway, great way to start a spaghetti western career. And then after that, he got a call from Sean Connery. How'd you like to be in Shalako, Woody? So, as an Indian, of course. And she's a Chato, Tom, if I'm not mistaken.
Chado.
Chado, right. Anyway.
You don't even think of him as being in Shalako. I mean, it's all Bridget Bardot and Sean Connery. But yeah, he's
the bad guy.
He's a pivotal role. He's the Sun's chief, and he duels with Sean to get through Apache territory.
Right, it's the battle for that spear, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to get that spear. But anyway, here's the poster. Sean Connery, Brigitte Bardot. It's an okay movie. I'll read a little bit about it and its history. It was known, Tom, shockingly, in 10 different countries as Shalako. But anyway, it's a 1968 British West German film directed by Edward Dmytryk, who did a lot of American movies. And, of course, Sean Connery, Brigitte Bardot, the great Stephen Boyd, Jack Hawkins, Peter Van Eyck, Honor Blackman, and Woody Strode. So it's an all-star cast. And while guiding a hunting party of clueless European aristocrats, cowboy Bosky Fulton, played by Stephen Boyd, leads them into a hostile Apache territory. Becoming separated from the group, Countess Irina Lazar, played by Bardot, experiences the first run-in with an Apache. Really? I never knew what that was, huh? And then results in the tracker Shalako, I'm Shalako, coming to her rescue. Despite Shalako's warning to leave the area immediately, the pampered foreigners fail to take him seriously, leaving them in grave danger. And there's that famous fight scene with Woody in that battle for the perennial spear, Tom.
That's right. Also, one bit of trivia here, Jack Hawkins had throat cancer and had his voice box removed, so he's dubbed in Shalako. That's not his real voice.
Wow, I didn't know that. And of course, one of the reasons Woody played Indians, Tom, was because why?
Oh, his heritage. His father and his mother both had Indian heritage in their blood.
Right. So it only makes sense that he would play an Indian. And of course, a lot in those days, it didn't matter what color you were; you
Oh
played an
no.
Indian. I
How many
mean,
American white guys played Indians
right.
40s, 50s into the 60s, right?
So the next spaghetti western on the radar of Woody Strode is another classic. So Shaliko's not exactly a classic, but we'll just move on and say it was Boot Hill, Tom, uh,
Hmm.
also known as Boot Hill Trinity Rides Again, which can be a little confusing,
Probably
but
re-release.
yeah, of course, because of the Terence Hill Bud
Hmm.
Spencer connection, they always wanted to name that film some sort of Trinity. But
Hmm.
it was directed by Giuseppe Colizzi, Terence Hill, Bud Spencer, Lionel Stander, Woody Strode, George Eastman, Victor Bono, Alberto De Aqua, and Eduardo Cianelli, and Enzo Fermante. It's an all-star cast, of course. And there's the poster for it. We've reviewed all of these films before. But real quick, running from his pursuers, a wounded Cat Stevens, and played by Terence Hill, hides in a circus where Woody Strode is working. Cat manages to escape, but Thomas's son is killed by a murderous gunman. Seeking revenge, Thomas searches for Cat, and then together they go to meet with Hutch Bessie, Bud Spencer, and his mute friend Baby Doll, George Eastman. Cat explains to Hutch the situation in which their friend Sharp is found, a gold missing community. A gold mining community is oppressed by a criminal organization who claims the gold and property for themselves when a yearly visit from the commissioner, Commissioner Boone, arrives. Aided by Mammy Circus, the four manage to finish off the criminals and inform the judge of the situation. And anyway, so in some accounts of this film, Tom, what do they say about Woody's character, Thomas?
I read someplace that he was supposed to be a bounty hunter. And that's one of the reasons why I couldn't understand why they didn't make more films with the black hero being the bounty hunters, because that was right during the black exploitation time. They would have had star actors, which would be internationally known. But I always thought of Thomas just as a performer in the circus.
Right. So yeah, I mean, exactly. Why make him a mute character? It didn't make
Hmm.
sense to me. But anyway, that's fine. It's still a good movie. It still gets the point across. And then he followed that up, Tom, with the Unholy Four, or Chuck Mull, which I prefer the Unholy Four. And we reviewed that film as well. That stars the great Leonard Mann, who's still with us, Woody Strode,
Yep.
Peter Martell, Lucia Montefiore,
Which
Helmut
is George
Schneider,
Eastman.
right?
Yep.
And Lucio Rosado and Elaine Naya. So let's show the poster for that. Woody is figured prominently in that poster, which is cool. It's a 1969 Italian film production, also known as Django, The Long Night of Knives, and the aforementioned Chuck Mull, and is directed by Enzo Barboni. And as the story goes, a violent gang robs a bank. They also commit arson because their version eases their getaway while the local prison is burning. Four of its inmates, Mann, Martell, Strode, and Eastman, profit from the turmoil. Among the four escapees, Chuck Mull, played by lead Leonard Mann, a young man who's suffering from amnesia, only remembers about his previous life that he'd been home in the town of Oaxa. For lack of a better idea, all the fugitives go there. It shows that Mull is not forgotten at that town, as Lion Udo, the father of one of the bank robbers, recognizes Mull. And he, whose clan has a feud with Mull's family, takes advantage of his condition by turning him against his own kin. Before the plan works out, Mull is warned on time by one of his fellow fugitives, and then Mull contacts his half-brother Alan and his father John, only when he learns then what caused his amnesia and why he ended up in prison. It was Alan who had once mistreated Mull and ran a scheme to put him away. He hates Mull since he knows that he is not the son of John Caldwell, but the child of a rapist. That's a nice ending.
Yeah, really.
Anyway, Woody plays Peter Martell's best friend and is always close by to protect him. Once again, underused, Tom?
Yeah, underused.
Why is that, Tom?
Strong silent type. I don't know why they put him prominently in a poster, but he's just there as the strong man, the muscle.
Right, like he is a lot of times. So
And
anyway, up
the
next,
other thing is
yes,
the
Tom.
the town of Oaxaca was also the same town mentioned in the uh, Leonard Mann's other film,
Oh, okay. You mean the Forgotten Pistolero, Tom?
Forgotten Pistolero. Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, moving on to the next film is another good one. One of the kind of like a five-man army type, and it was known as The Deserter. And it's actually a pretty good film. If you can get past the unknown lead, who really didn't make much, right, Tom? After that,
Yeah. I mean, he's
Bekim
not known in the
Fahimu, not really
States.
a
Yeah.
fan of his. But
Right.
anyway, he does a decent job. The film is also known as The SOBs, Ride to Glory, Indian Fighter, and The Devil's Backbone. I think it was released in the States. It's an Italian, USA, Yugoslavian film made in '71 and directed by Burt Kennedy, Tom, who made a lot of westerns. American director. As I said, starred Bekim Fahimu, John Huston, Richard Crenna, Chuck Connors, Ricardo Montalban, Ian Benin, Brandon DeWild, Slim Pickens, Albert Salmi, Woody Strode, and Patrick Wayne. Great all-star cast. And let's show the poster as I read the story. After his wife is raped and killed by Apache Indians during a massacre at a church mission, Captain Victor Caleb, played by our good starring actor Fahimu, shoots Colonel Wade Brown, Richard Crenna, who he holds responsible for the killings. He then deserts the army and retreats into the wilderness. 2 years later, General Miles, played by John Huston, offers him amnesty if he can successfully lead a difficult mission against the same lawless Apache tribe. Victor agrees and guides a small group deep into the country to take his revenge. Among the members is Jackson, there he is, played by Woody Strode, an expert with a rope, Reynolds, Chuck Connors, an explosive expert, and Ricardo Montalban, a scout. Captain Bill Robinson, Patrick Wayne is a Gatling gun expert. Tom, you wrote in your notes you don't think this film lives up to its potential. I have to agree. I don't like this. The lead actor, he's very wooden. You said, what did you say? He's so wooden. He looks like
He
who?
makes Anthony Stephan look like Laurence Olivier.
But
Yeah,
this movie,
I think they were going to try and make like a John Ford cavalry movie, with all these guys in it that were big names, but it just doesn't come off.
right? And Strode has a nice role that's important to the plot. He's a master engineer, and he constructs a rope bridge across a chasm that the band must cross to reach the camp of Mangus Durango without being detected. Another stupid part of this movie, it's a good movie, except fast forward to all the fights that Bekim has to fight. Remember, doesn't he fight every one of them, each one of them, or something to prove that he's better than them?
Yeah, they ate his guts, so
Yeah, they do.
He has to prove he's better than they are.
Yeah, I didn't like that. But anyway, it's an okay film if you just fast forward through that part. So, Tom, one thing I failed to mention at the beginning of this Woody Strode tribute is Woody was a part of many spaghetti westerns that were planned, written. Maybe they were going to film, but for some reason fell through, and the film was never made. And the first one is The Man from Abilene. So tell us about that one.
Well, it was supposed to be directed by Roberto Montero and Nirvana Naima. I don't know who that is. In 1970, it was called L'Uomo di Abilene, which Jay said correctly, The Man from Abilene. It was supposed to star Rory Calhoun and Woody Strode, and was supposed to be about a struggle to the death between a white man and a Negro. It's not to be confused with 1956's The Man from Abilene, starring Jimmy Stewart. But once again, it couldn't get the proper financial support, so it was never made.
Wow, it sounds like it would have been a good one. But it
Yeah.
doesn't stop there, Tom. His next film was also planned, and it was called Bitter Road. And once again, falling through, and Tom will tell us a little about that.
Yeah, all I could find on this one was a 1971 Israeli, Italian, and German co-production, produced by Menahem Golan and Yoram Globus. So this is when they were at their height, making action movies. It was supposed to star Mark Lester and Woody Strode, but that's all I could find about it. Nothing else. Never did make it.
Well, remember, Tom, we were going to do an episode called Spaghetti Westerns That Could Have Been, right?
Could have been, yeah.
Yeah, maybe for season 3, Tom.
Yep.
But anyway, let's move on to the next film, which Woody did participate in, and it's a Joe Namath classic, Tom.
Classic.
Right, I think he was still at the height of his quarterbacking for the Jets, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm sure.
Yeah, most of these, most actors or football players, they appear like Jim Brown or what, or it doesn't matter who it was, after their career is over to fall onto something else once their career is over. But some stars, because they were so famous and popular, would actually be in a film at the height of their career. But too bad Broadway Joe couldn't bring The Last Rebel up to par, Tom.
I think, Jay, that this was probably 1970. He was probably playing with the Rams towards the end of his career.
But that was actually later, Tom.
Was it really?
He was still with the Jets, yeah.
I was thinking maybe he was in Hollywood at that time, and that's why they were able to
No,
use
he was
him.
always Hollywood Joe, Tom.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's why he probably said, oh, well, he'll do it. And then, he was making commercials as well. But let's take a look at the poster. And Woody figures prominently, as does Jack Elam and the great Ty Hardin. And The Last Rebel was a 1970 USA-Italian co-production. And it was directed by Denise McCoy. And there's a great song in there. There's 2 great songs, Tom. I'm Dying for You and Oh, Matilda. So
Jay, one of the worst soundtracks in spaghetti western genre. That along and the Last Command, the one with Shatner in it.
Oh, right. White
Comanche. Yeah. Those are the 2 worst.
So the aforementioned actors I mentioned, there's also Mike Forrest, Remo Capitani, and Victoria George. Have we ever discussed this movie, Tom?
No.
And rightly so.
Rightly so, yeah.
We went
This
through
will be the only time.
We went through 65 episodes with nearly a mention of The Last Rebel. We thought we could make it without it.
We probably mentioned it when we talked about TV Western actors and Ty Hardin. But like you said,
might have mentioned
only
it. You're right.
We didn't talk about it, yeah.
So anyway, Woody Strode is saved from a lynching during the Civil War of 1865. And Confederate soldiers, Joe Namath and Matt Graves, paid by Jack Elam, flee from the Union soldiers and the one who imprisoned them. Then Hollis, played by Joe Namath, frees, as I said, Woody Strode, who plays a guy named Duncan from a lynching. And then they become a trio. And later when Hollis wins a lot of money, at the pool table, and Matt doesn't get any, and the 2 soldiers become enemies. This leads to a showdown between Hollis and Duncan against Matt and the henchmen he has put together to steal the money. So basically the KKK was trying to lynch Woody, Tom.
Yeah, and then he runs into a small black kid that they're going to molest too, and Woody saves the kid.
Right.
And that's when he sort of leaves the 2, Elam and Joe, to their lonesome, but rejoins them later.
Right. And Tom writes in his notes, I love reading Tom's notes before the show, he might have been a Hall of Fame college and pro football player, but he couldn't act out of a paper bag, Tom.
Terrible. Did you see the look? To the listeners, we've been bombarded with Social Security ads.
Oh, 2 in the morning, Tom.
Yeah, and one of them is Joe Namath. I swear he's got ears as big as saucers.
As big as Dumbo, right, Tom?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's hard. The film is hard to watch. It's almost like CC and Company, Tom.
See, another great one.
Yeah, which I think you'd probably put ahead of this one if you were going to watch a Joe Namath double bill.
Barely. Thank God for motorcycles, yeah.
So what has a worse score, Tom? Keoma or The Last Rebel?
Well, I would listen to Keoma before I listen to this.
You listen to that screeching theme song?
Yeah, I get flack all the time because this is by Tony Ashton and John Lord, who were part of Ashton, Gardner, and Dyke, which was a pretty popular British group at that time, but it's just terrible. It doesn't go with a Western film.
Right. So let's move along to 2 more spaghetti Westerns that coulda, shoulda, woulda been with Woody Strode. And the first one has a great title, Sundown John. What's that all about, Tom?
Well, this is, again, a 72 Italian production. Director is Claudio Racca, R-A-C-C-A. Have no idea who that is. Supposed to have been Woody Strode and Orchidea de Santos. Now, That's a female, and she was in two Euros westerns, Two Sons of Ringo with Franco and Ciccio, and The Prey of Vultures. But again, it never saw the light of day.
Right, and it sounds interesting. I actually would look forward to that. Now, our next film that coulda, shoulda, woulda been is one that's made the rounds and it was discussed. It's been written about, and even Tom tried to get some answers from the Hammer. And we're talking about the Josh Clayton story. Tom, tell us about that one.
Yeah, this one pops up when you talk about John Wayne or John Ford. It was called the Josh Clayton story or Appointment with Precedence. Supposed to be a 1973 USA Spanish co-production. It's going to be directed by John Ford, story by Robert Johnson, screenplay by James Warner Bella. It's about the first black graduate from West Point to command a cavalry unit. Josh Clayton was supposed to be played by Fred Williamson. Sergeant was Woody Strode, who was supposed to have cameo appearances by James Stewart, Henry Fonda, and John Wayne. So again, sort of like the John Ford cavalry films. I talked to Fred Williamson about appearing on the show, and I'd love to have had him, but when I sent him the information I had, he said, "This is news to me." And I was sort of, I told Jay, I was sort of like, huh? Because Mike Malloy had interviewed Fred Williamson a couple of months ago, and he brought up this, and Fred was blown away that someone knew about this film that wasn't made. So I thought I was going to get some information from Fred, but apparently it's skipped his mind or he drew a blank. So that's as much as I can offer.
Right. The Josh Clayton story, starring Fred the Hammer Williamson, right, Tom?
Yep.
Okay. So anyway, after that is yet another film that failed to go into production, Tom. And we're talking about Shadow Horse. And that sounds like another interesting title. What information do you have on that one?
Let's see if I've got. Shadow Horse was a 1973 USA Yugoslavian co-production, supposed to be directed by Bob Clark or Robert Clark. Supposed to have been cast by Woody Strode and James Coburn. So that had been an interesting pairing. But that's all I know about that one.
Wow. I think Bob Clark is the famous director of Porky's, Tom.
That's correct.
And he also did a couple horror films in the early 70s.
Yeah, he was hot.
Yeah, he was for a minute. He's still around too.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, after that, Woody made a film that actually we all know about. It's either you love it or you hate it. I'm on the fence on it, Tom. I do like the I guess most parts of when Franco Nero is kind of violent and does the countdown. I've got, what does he say, 3 bullets, Tom, or 5?
Yeah, I think it's 4.
Oh, right, and he does
Four or
the countdown.
three,
It's
yeah,
really Enzo's fingers.
It's Enzo's fingers in front of
Right,
the
but
camera,
I'm not a
correct.
big fan of Keoma. Some people love it. It's on their back. I've talked about this before. And maybe it's the first time I've brought it up in over a year, but it's not in my top list, but it's in other people's. They really, really love it. And that's fine. We all have our own opinions. So let's talk about Keoma for a second. I'll give a quick rundown and show the poster.
Just before we do that, I found another Woody Strode film that was never made last night.
Oh, wait a minute, Tom. This is breaking news.
Yeah, it's called Winds of Scorched Earth, supposedly to be made in 72. Have no idea of any of the crew members, but the cast would be great. It was supposed to have been starring Woody Strode, George Hilton, Stan Cooper, and Jessica Dublin. If you ask who's Jessica Dublin, she's the actress that played Trinity's mother in the second Trinity movie. Trinity is Still My Name. Remember the eating scene in the very beginning with Harry Carey Jr. and Bud Spencer and Terrence Hill sitting around the table, and she was supposed to have been an ex-prostitute.
I thought you were going to
His
say.
mother.
I thought you were going to say Trinity is still my mother, Tom.
Yeah, but that's who Jessica Dublin is.
Okay, well,
She's
thanks
an American actress,
thanks for
yeah.
that breaking news, Tom. It looks like he was in so many unfulfilled movies. But let's get back to Keoma for a second. 75 Italian production, directed, of course, by Enzo Castellari, and also known as Django's Great Return, Django Rides Again, and The Violent Breed, and Desperado. Franco Nero, Olga Carlatos, Woody, of course, Bill Berger, Donald O'Brien, also Maria Guarini, Antonio Marcini, John Lafredo, and Leon Lenore. And the witch was played by who, Tom?
Gabriella Giacobbe.
Yeah.
Or Giacobi.
Keoma, come back.
Yeah.
Anyway, Keoma, a half-breed Indian, returns to his native country after having fought in the Civil War. And unfortunately, the situation has much changed. The town is in the hands of the evil Caldwell, and everyone is against him except his stepfather and an old Negro friend, to put it lightly. Of course, that's played by Woody Strode. Mm-hmm. And with the help of both, the man tries to return things to the way they were before his departure, but will have to face off with his stepbrothers. You think this is Woody's most popular role after Once Upon a Time, Tom?
It's a good question. Probably because like you said, a lot of people consider it a classic. Although to me, it's Castellari tries to get too philosophical in this. Keoma standing for justice and law and whatever. It keeps talking about that, but there's enough action in it to keep it moving.
Right, and of course, Woody is very proficient with a bow and arrow because it's like his fifth film where that's his main weapon.
Yeah.
So it only makes sense unless they used a double, but I think that's him.
Oh, I'm sure because of again his native heritage, and you see him use the bow and arrow in several films, so I'm sure it was him.
Right. So moving on to another spaghetti western with Woody Strode, and this is the tail end of the spaghetti western genre. Mm-hmm. We have yet to find a spaghetti western actor, no matter how great they are, who hasn't made, what do you call it, Tom?
Some duds.
Yeah, a dud or a flopperoo or whatever you want to call it. Speaking kindly.
Well, that's what they were making in those days at the end of the genre. So I mean,
it was all comedies. It was Franco Ciccio,
yep.
Or the red, the white, and the yellow.
Mm-hmm.
Or
every director wanted to show he could make a comedy western.
Right, and I wish they didn't. I wish they didn't go in that direction. But whatever, it is what it is. And this is just another one of those, not to be confused with the Humphrey Bogart Aldo Ray movie. We're No Angels. This one's called We Are No Angels, and it's with Michael Colby, Paul Smith, Woody Strode, John Ireland, and directed by Frank Kramer. So let's talk a little bit about that one. Let's give you the info. Frank Kramer was really Gianfranco Parolini, by the way.
Yep.
I don't think we've ever reviewed this one, Tom.
Nope.
I mean, I know we did.
Well, we probably talked about it again with John Ireland.
That's right. But maybe just very quickly.
Yep.
Right. So the story goes, Raphael McDonald, as opposed to Ronald McDonald, a big man with a deadly punch who has a brother, Angel, who brings him only trouble. Angel is also smart, though he forces him to join him in the business, getting into the transportation service contract between High Falls City and the nearest railway, which is also the interest of the town boss. Frustrated with their attempts to eliminate their rivals using Raphael's fist, they devise with a comparison between cars and coaches issued by the government to decide who gets the grant. The two brothers become wealthy, not by winning the race, but by the discovery of an oil field made by their friend, an old man. That's nice, Tom. And there's Woody in his fight scene.
Yeah, Woody plays a blacksmith in this again. He's got to show off his physique.
Well, he always does in every film he's in.
Yep. This is one of those rip-offs that were the Michael Colby and Paul Smith were Trinity clones. Paul Smith looked like Bud Spencer and Michael Colby looked like Terrence Hill. So there were half a dozen films made with them in it doing parodies of Bud
As
Spencer
if the audience won't recognize it, Tom.
Yeah, exactly.
But once again,
Well,
Woody
Paul
doesn't
Smith
say much. He just fights.
Paul Smith was supposed to be in Popeye, or played Brutus in Popeye because Bud Spencer turned down the role or had another role active at the time. So I mean, they look enough alike that you could get away with it, but the movies were second rate for sure.
It makes sense. So anyway, Tom, I don't know if this is correct on my notes here, that another film that wasn't made with Woody Strode called Spaghetti Western, but not to be confused with the Franco Nero one, Tom?
Yeah, spaghetti western, and this came up in Variety, and it was supposed to have a bunch of American actors. Lee Van Cleef was supposed to be in it, Jack Palance, Woody Strode, and it looked very interesting. But I think the director again was Burt Kennedy, and it was going to be a comedy ripoff of the genre itself. It wasn't going to be taken seriously
I see.
because
Okay,
it came
so now
along in
let's move to
1981.
right. Yeah, by that time.
Yep.
Anyway, so the spaghetti western genre, I think, was all but dead by the time this next film came out in '92. But I think you included it anyway because it's Mario Van Peebles' attempt, I guess, to make a spaghetti western, which is fine for the early '90s, and it's actually not a bad film. And we're talking about Posse, of course. And let's show the poster. Stephen Baldwin, Big Daddy Kane, Charles Lane, Tiny Lister, Tone Loc, Blair Underwood, Mario Van Peebles, Billy Zane, and of course Woody Strode plays the storyteller. He's not mentioned on the poster. But anyway, it's a '92 U.S.-British film, also known as The Revenge of Jesse Lee. And the posse of Jesse Lee, played by Mario Van Peebles, is comprised of a small group of survivors of the Spanish-American War who escaped from an ambush set by the sadistic Colonel Billy Zane. With a cache of gold taken from Graham, they leave Cuba and return to the U.S. Lee's posse moves west as he pursues vengeance against the men who lynched his father. With Colonel Graham hot on his heels, Lee arrives at Freemanville, a community of ex-slaves, the culmination of his father's dreams, whose existence is in danger from a group of corrupt whites living in the next town, led by Sheriff Bates. And as I said, Woody, looking kind of old and frail here, yet he still lived a few years after this still. He's the narrator who tells the reporters about blacks in the West. There's a nice tribute to him at the end with photos and cuts from several films that he was in. Nice camera zoom from the boots to his hat from Once Upon a Time in the West. What did you, Tom? I thought if you're going to do a spaghetti western, do a spaghetti. It was like the black version of The Quick and the Dead, Tom.
Yeah, it was a black exploitation movie, and the problem with these newer westerns is they wanted to cover all the genres. So they cover, war, they cover Indians. They try and think they've got one chance to make a western, so let's put all the elements of a western into the film. So it sort of ruins the overall picture.
Right. And so there's our tribute and homage to the great Woody Strode. Made hundreds of movies, but those were his spaghetti westerns. Steals almost every scene he's ever in because he's just got that magnetic appeal. And, I met him, Tom, at the the Hollywood Collector Show.
Me too.
Couldn't have been nicer. He posed with me. And it was just, we talked a little bit. What film did I think I talked about Spartacus for a minute. He seemed kind of old and frail. I didn't want to say, hey, remember the Revengers? So, and I didn't want to say, and I'm sure he was asked a million times about Once Upon a Time, but when I meet a spaghetti western star, it's kind of old and frail. I kind of like to pick an obscure film where they go, oh, you remember that one? So their eyes light up. So we talked about as I said, Spartacus and the Revengers. But anyway.
Yeah, I met him after you because he was even more lethargic.
Oh, yeah.
I think that he was dying. I mean, he knew it. He had lung cancer, and there wasn't anybody at his table. He was just sitting there and no one at either side.
Makes no sense.
And I came up and talked spaghetti westerns with him, and he basically would shake his head,
Oh, right. He didn't say much at that point.
No.
Right.
No.
But anyway, so let's get to part 2 of our show today, and that is our tribute to Frank Wolff. Great character actor with that almost handlebar mustache and big fuzzy hair that you recall. Once you see him, you'll recognize him. And Tom will read a little bit of bio first about the great Frank Wolff and his tragic demise, Tom.
Yep. Walter Frank Herman Wolff was born on May 11th, 1928 in San Francisco, California. He was the son of a physician. Both parents were of German descent. The elder Wolff, as a political and social maverick, encouraged young Frank to follow an unconventional path. He attended UCLA, where he studied acting and stagecraft, wrote and directed plays, and befriended another actor-director, Monty Hellman. Between 1957 and 1961, he appeared in nearly 20 episodes of TV series and feature films. Wolff had bit roles in his first two films, Roger Corman's I, Mobster and The Wasp Woman, both in '59. Later in the year, however, Wolff's billing dramatically increased to co-lead status in his next two Corman productions, scripted by Charles B. Griffith, Beast from Haunted Cave and Ski Troop Attack, both in '59. Shot back-to-back in the snowy wilderness outside Deadwood, South Dakota, the films used the same crew and cast, which in addition to Wolff included Michael Forrest, another spaghetti western compatriot, Wally Campo, Richard Sinatra, Frank's nephew, and Sheila Carroll. The first of the two, Beast, directed by Corman, by Wolff's UCLA friend Monty Hellman. In 1960, Wolff was seen in 3 TV appearances, The Untouchables, The Lawless Years, and Rawhide. He also had the third billed role of Baron in the Twilight Zone episode, A Passage for Trumpet, starring Jack Klugman. In autumn 1960, Wolff traveled to Greece to co-star in another Roger Corman-directed Charles B. Griffith scripted low-budgeter, Atlas, released in May of '61. The title role was again assigned to the brawny Corman regular Michael Forrest. In Atlas, Wolff was cast as the treacherous King Proximides, a scene-stealing lead villain who was singled out by the few critics who reviewed the film. Sporting a short beard, Proximides was alternately charming, witty, overbearing, and menacing, which is what he carried on to the rest of his acting career, I believe. On Corman's advice, Wolff remained in Europe and became a well-known character actor in over 50 mostly Italian-made films of the 1960s, including crime, suspense, giallos, and spaghetti westerns. Early in his European career, he returned to Greece to essay a major second-billed role in his most prestigious movie to that point, 1963 Best Picture Oscar nominee America, America, which producer, director, writer Elia Kazan filmed on location. As Vartan Damadian, the Armenian friend of the central character played by Stathis Gialelis, a heavily mustached Wolff, essayed a complex, multi-layered personality. Wolff's numerous Italian films of the 60s, he was also seen a few episodes of British-produced TV series such as The Saint and The Baron. When Wolff's career slowed in the 1970s, he became despondent. His subsequent divorce sent him into a state of deep depression. Wolff committed suicide in his hotel room at the Rome Hilton when he was only 43. His body was found by a masseuse on December 12, 1971, and police said he had slashed his wrists. After failing to do so, he slashed his throat. He slashed his wrist after failing to slash his throat. Frank's death is covered by Brett Halsey's novel Magnificent Strangers, which came out in 1978. A different method of committing suicide is reported by Brett, but I'm not going to go into it on here. It's too gruesome.
Talk about a movie that's ripe to be made, Tom. We can make movies on Bill Berger, on Frank Wolff, on Peter Lee Lawrence, and Al Murlock.
Al Mullock.
Al Murlock. I always call him Murlock for some reason. I think I'm confusing that with the Time Machine, the Murlocks. But anyway, it's just tragic. And he's such a great actor, but probably suffered from depression, obviously. So, but anyway, we're going to review the spaghetti westerns that he was in. And I will read the reviews or the storylines of what they were. And it begins first with his first spaghetti western, and that was Ringo, the Face of Revenge. And as the story goes, let me find the notes. Here we are. Also known as Ringo, the Mark of Vengeance, and it was directed by Mario Caiano, 1966 Italian-Spanish co-production, starring Anthony Steffan, the great Eduardo Fajardo, of course, Frank Wolff, Armando Calvo, Alejandro Nilo, and Alfonso Goda. We've reviewed this film, I think, during the Anthony Steffan episode.
Yep.
Two adventurers, played by Steffan and Fajardo, save a man named Fidel, who is chased by outlaws. On his back, they discover the map has been drawn. Intrigued, they force him to reveal its meaning. It's half of a map that indicates where the hidden treasure is located. The other half is in the hands of a sheriff and a former colleague of Fidel. three of them decide to join together. And although reluctantly, they must count in their number also a crooked gambler named Tricky, played by Frank Wolff, who has managed to make himself indispensable. The journey toward the treasure is initially hampered by the intervention of Sam Dillinger, the sheriff, but he is killed by Tricky, who manages to memorize the directions of the part of the map possessed by the sheriff. The difficulties begin to multiply, both of the discord that arises among the four and an attack by a group of bandits. They save a girl named Manuela, who has been captured by the bandits, and Tim is saved from a lynching, and he falls in love with her. Of course he does. Fidel and Tim are killed, and it's time for Davy to deal with Tricky, who has hired 5 assassins. Davy is left alone with the girl with the gold before abandoning the wild region, and he gives the villagers the treasure, which had been part of the price of so much blood. It's a buddy movie, obviously, with Stefan and Fajardo. Stefan is also a gunman, but he's a gunman, and Tim is not too bright a sidekick, and he keeps a pet rabbit, Tom.
Yep.
And Wolff is great, as always, devious and sly, perfect for the role of Tricky. And, of course, it has a good soundtrack. Who did the score, Tom?
The score was done by one of my favorites, Francesco De Masi.
Oh, that's right. Fun movie. Ringo, the Face of Revenge. Stefan's got his usual hard look, face that he
No
always
nonsense.
has.
Yep.
So it's a good movie, so check that out if you get a chance. The next movie Frank Wolff was in was A Few Dollars for Django. Once again, another Anthony Stefan movie. So I guess his first 2 spaghetti westerns were with Tony, and it's with Gloria Osuna, of course, Frank Wolff and Thomas More. It's a 66 Italian-Spanish production directed by Leon Klimovsky. And I think Enzo directed some of this too, right, Tom?
Yeah, a lot of Klimovsky movies. He was old at that time. They just used his name for recognition. And usually somebody else actually directed it.
Right. And we've discussed this film many, many times. It's actually one of my favorite Anthony Stefan movies. I love the posters for it. There's many of them. The story goes, Django's a bounty killer, played by Stefan, who gets caught up in a cattle war when he is searching for a gang leader, played by Frank Wolff. The robbers of a small Montana town were the twin brother, Trevor Norton. So Wolff plays 2 roles, Tom.
Yeah, yeah.
So the bandit lives
in a
with his
way.
niece Sally, played by Gloria Osuna. Stefan plays an undercover bounty hunter who disguises himself as a lawman but gets involved with a range war and falls in love with his praised daughter. Wolff plays 2 roles. I can only find this one screenshot, unless, of course, I would have went into the film and took it. But due to copyright reasons, I think we'll just do one. Wolff's henchmen show up and spoil his cover. He plays a sympathetic role when he wants to. And the other one is just a mean hombre, Tom.
Yep. Actually, you say he plays 2 roles. He's the same guy using 2 different names, trying to cover himself by saying, I've got a twin brother. The bad guy has died, and the good one's still alive.
Oh, that's
To cover
right.
his tracks.
Okay.
Yeah.
But still a fun movie.
Yeah.
Check it out. There's a great fight with Anthony Stefan and a bunch of people with wooden, what do you call them, Tom, that the devil has? Pitchforks?
With pitchforks, yeah. Upsets the town, yeah.
Anyway, our next spaghetti western up that we're going to talk about is a stranger in town, Tom. Mm-hmm. And we've discussed this. Tempt him, whip him, brand him, break him. We've discussed this during the Tony Anthony episode.
Yep.
But we'll discuss it here again. It's also called A Dollar Between the Teeth, which was released in the U.S., and for A Dollar in the Teeth. It's a 66 Italian USA co-production directed by Luigi Vanzi with Tony Anthony, Frank Wolff, Yolanda Modio, Gia Sandri, Ralph Baldassari, and Aldo Berti. We know the story. Stranger, Tony Anthony, dressed like a U.S. Army captain, helps an outlaw named Aguilar, played by Wolff, rob a large load of gold. Essentially, Tom, in these movies, he's basically playing the blind man character. Mm-hmm. And when he wants a piece of it for his efforts, Aguilar has him beaten up by his other gang members. And it's a pretty brutal roughing up.
Yeah, he
Very,
gets passed around.
Nice, bloody, yeah. After having recovered, he follows the gang to Cerro Gordo, where he tries to get even with them. They outsmart him. Captured, he has to endure torture by the gang, by this time his mistress, but eventually escapes. And then he's taken out one by one by Aguilar and his own in the final showdown. Great look, very revolutionary, but it kind of looks like a cross between Groucho Marx and Gabe Kaplan, Tom, from Welcome Back, Kotter.
Yeah.
But anyway, using his brains to outwit Aguilar and his Gatling gun, he finally comes out on top. And Aguilar is a fair man, is the film's catchphrase, Tom.
That's right. There we go. What kind of man am I? I'm a fair man. Which
Right.
is
Wolff appeared
opposite.
here as a favor to Anthony. Remember, he begged him for a role on Blind Man, but remember he never got back to him.
Yep.
And so he threw him some scraps and said, "You can be in this one." Not the classic that the other one is. Although the Stranger films have a certain appeal in the Tony Anthony oeuvre of films. Unfortunately, right after he made some films, but he committed suicide, and Tony never forgave himself. We discussed that at length, Tom.
Yeah. Frank had done him a favor by being in Stranger in Town, and then when he asked for a role in Blind Man, Tony said all the roles had been cast and turned him down. Unknowingly, that's when he was going through his streak of depression after his divorce, and not too long after that's when he committed suicide, and Tony always thought that he had a part playing in that.
Right. And I had my chronological setup wrong. Of course, he made this film first, got this film, didn't get Blind Man, which caused the depression, and then the suicide. So excuse me for that. Anyway, next up on the list, Tom, is Last of the Bad Men. It's not a bad movie. No Tears for a Killer. Time of the Vultures is another great title for this one. Let's show the poster. It's a 67 Italian production, directed by Fernando Cicero. And it's funny, Kitosh is George Hilton, not to be confused with the Kitosh movies, but that's who he is. Frank Wolff plays the black one, Tom.
He's great.
Yeah, Eduardo Fajardo, of course, Pamela Tudor, Femi Benusi, and Franco Balducci. The story is George Hilton is a young cowboy in the employ of Don Jaime Mendoza, played by Fajardo. He's beaten by his employer because he had dared to woo his wife. Filled with resentment and hatred, Kitosh leaves the ranch and begins a life of an outlaw, joining the notorious bandit Black Tracy. I mean, what else would he look like, right, Tom? Yeah. Soon, however, the contrast between the two arise because Kitosh kills only when he is forced to, while Tracy enjoys the killing. When Tracy proposes to take criminal action against Don Jaime, Kitosh, eager to take revenge on his former master, and accepts without hesitation. The two kidnap the wife of Don Jaime, and demand a large sum of ransom. Wanting to get his wife back safely, let's just call him Don, agrees to sacrifice all the money in his possessions and goes to deliver it personally to the two outlaws. At this point, Tracy takes advantage of Kitosh's good faith, disarms him, and prepares to kill him along with Don and his wife to escape unmolested with all the money. But Kitosh confronts Tracy, and although wounded and unable to win over his rival, he kills him. So Don Jaime is returned the ransom money, and the young Kitosh leaves, determined to rebuild his life. So this is one of those obscure ones, Tom, that you enjoy.
Yeah, this is one of those hidden gems. I mean, I never saw Frank Wolff look so good. He's in black, and I mean, the flat-brimmed hat, he looks really, really mean in this one, and he is. Kitosh, remember, the man who came from the north was also George Hilton, but that's sort of a comedy. This one is not. He's the same type of sort of dupe, not too bright, but he's a Don Juan, and at the end he revolts against Tracy and feels sympathetic for Eduardo Fajardo and goes back to what he used to be. And,
right.
To me, it's Frank Wolff's best spaghetti western role.
Oh, really? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, moving on, he's in another classic, Django, God Forgives, I Don't, also known as Kill or Be Killed, and Blood River. And let's take a look at the poster for that one. And Terrence Hill stars as many people. Django, Pretty Face, Cat Stevens, Wild Doc, Doc Will. It was directed by Giuseppe Colizzi. Of course, Bud Spencer is in it. And Frank Wolff. This is one of my favorite Frank Wolff roles, Tom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Gina Rovere and Manuel Martin. And, of course, Jose Turan.
Yep.
So, the story goes, Bill San Antonio, played by Frank Wolff, pulls off a train robbery, taking $300,000 in gold, and killing all the passengers on the train. He tries to come off as a sensible, likable guy, but he's a killer.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. One of these, however, before dying, reveals the name of a bloodthirsty bandit. The railroad assigns Hutch Bessie, played by Bud Spencer, an insurance agent who joins forces with his one-time pal, Cat Stevens, a gunman who believes he has killed San Antonio in a previous duel. The killing of a sheriff gives Cat a clue to track down the outlaws. In fact, following a group of bandits, he arrives at their lair, but is captured. Earp, who has also been on the right track, is unable to leave Cat and recover the precious booty because of a disagreement between the two. While fighting, where am I? While fighting, I lost my, where am I? While fighting, they are again captured by the bandits and enduring all manners of torture because they have hidden the stolen money. Cat, meanwhile, with the help of Bud, played by Manuel Martin, Bill's right-hand man, is released with the promise of gold and takes the opportunity to kill the bandit. Then Earp manages to free himself and arrives in time to prevent a duel, forcing Bill to surrender. The latter, through a ruse, manages to hurt him, but is inevitably killed by Cat. The two finally share the reward money. So this is the first of a trio of Cat and Hutch films, followed by Ace High and Boot Hill, Tom, all directed by Giuseppe Colizzi.
Yep, this is the first pairing of Bud Spencer and Terrence Hill. Remember, Peter Martell was supposed to be the Terrence Hill character, but he got in a fight with his girlfriend and either kicked the bed and broke his foot or somehow fell out of bed and broke his leg or something, but he was unable to make it to the set, so they hired Terrence Hill at the last minute.
I wonder if that was on his conscience for years, Tom.
Probably.
Right. So Wolff is excellent as the deceptive outlaw Bill San Antonio in one of his finest performances. I think it's his best.
Yeah,
So
he
I would
shows
pick
all
this
kinds
one.
of acting ability. Like you said, he comes across as a nice guy one minute, and then he's treacherous the next, and he covers all the roles.
Right. It's great. I really like this film a lot. And that opening, no, dead, no, dead. Right, Tom?
That's right.
So anyway, so let's move on to the next film, which is a nice change of pace for all the actors involved. And we're talking about Villa Rides. And Charles Bronson's especially a mean-spirited guy in this film.
Oh, yeah.
Rio Muerte is another name for it. 67 U.S. Spanish co-production. Directed by Buzz Kulik, who did a lot of American TV movies, Tom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it is a spaghetti western because it was filmed in Spain, was it not?
Yep.
Okay. Or at least got Spanish money.
Yep.
So Yul Brynner, of course, plays Pancho Villa. Robert Mitchum is in it. Maria Garcia Buccello, Robert Vijaro, Frank Wolff, Herbert Lom, Alexander Knox, and my ex-wife, Deanna Loris. The story goes, pilot Lee Arnold, played by Robert Mitchum, is pulled into the Mexican Revolution by his own greed. The Texas gunrunner is forced to land in Mexico when his plane develops engine problems. Joining Pancho Villa, played by Yul Brynner, and his trusted band of guerrilla fighters and bandits in order to save his life, while being tormented by Rodolfo Fierro, played by Bronson, Villa's right-hand man. Villa must face possible betrayal by his own president's naivete. As time transpires, Arnold develops a sense of camaraderie with Villa and his cause. Now, Frank plays one of the most ruthless generals.
Yep.
He just
He's got a
hangs
small
people
role,
every
but-
5 minutes, Tom.
Yep. He plays the typical Eduardo Fajardo general role. Mean, full of hate, loves to kill
The
people.
hanging scenes are brutal. He just ties them up, hands behind their back, and he just lynches them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody's killed. This has got a body count like there's no tomorrow. Bronson is
right.
like, he's sitting down with a gun. Okay, anybody want to leave? Leave.
The best scene about it, because the guy he plays, Rodolfo Fierro, was a real character, and he was Pancho Villa's right hand man.
Right.
And what Fierro liked to do is line up uh, the peons or the federale prisoners, and one behind the other, and see how many he could shoot through with a bullet. So he's, oh, I only got 3 guys this time with the shot, but he would try to extend. Maybe next time I can get 4 with one shot.
Maybe I can get 4.
He was brutal. Yep.
No. Basically, remember what he says: whoever wants to escape, escape. And as soon as they get right over that wall,
yeah.
he just shoots them in the back. So very
Yep.
brutal movie.
Mm-hmm.
Not one of my favorites. The story's a little lacking, and I keep waiting for Bob Mitchum to say, "Beef, it's what's for dinner." But anyway, I guess it was trying to be a little bit of a wild bunch too, Tom.
Yeah, probably. That
But
sounds right.
it's okay. It's not a bad movie, actually. So next is another film. I Came, I Saw, I Shot. We reviewed this film, I think, 2 or 3 times before. So let's show the poster. It stars Antonio Sabato, John Saxon, and Frank Wolff. And $1 Too Many, The Three Who Upset the West. Vado, Vedo e Spado is the Italian title. Italian-Spanish co-production directed by our good friend Enzo Castellari. And it's with those 3 people, also with Agata Flori and Leo Anchoris. And the story goes, Edward Keane, played by Frank Wolff, impersonates a preacher in order to plant a stack of Bibles containing dynamite with a timer onto a stagecoach. The coach containing the 400 grand is held up and robbed by Antonio Sabato, who takes the mailbag which contains the dynamite and narrowly avoids being blown up. When the stagecoach reaches the Springwood Bank, a gambler named Clay, played by John Saxon, has just won 130 grand at the poker table and is told to collect his winning from the bank, but Clay finds that Moses and Keane have teamed up and have robbed the bank. So the 3 rogues now take turns stealing the money from each other in a series of double crosses, fake marriages, and plenty of fisticuffs. Tom, I'm not a fan of the comedic elements.
Yep.
If they would have left the comedy out, it would have been a half-decent film. The 3 must unite to fend off the attack of a gang of Mexican bandits who have gotten the wind of the loot, and then the U.S. Army is sent to recover it. We did this film during the Antonio Sabato episode, and Frank Wolff does a good, as I said, good comedic performance if you don't mind spaghetti western comedic performances.
Wolff is one of those guys that he can express comedy with his facial features. So he doesn't have to go slapstick. I mean, he just shows frustration. He shows joy, anger with just facial stuff.
Right. So then, coming up after this film was a classic that some people consider to be their favorite non-Leone spaghetti western. It's definitely a top 10 or 20 in most people's lists because of the uniqueness of the location. And we're talking about The Great Silence. And Frank Wolff is in that one as well. So let's show the poster. I thought I'd show the Japanese one, Tom.
Okay, that's what I've got too.
Right. So it's The Great Silence, The Big Silence, Il Grande Silenzio, 67 Italian-French co-production, directed by the great Sergio Corbucci. Tom, I'm going to butcher this name as I always do, Jean-Louis Trintignant.
Yeah, Trintignant Jean.
I just call him JLT, Tom.
Yeah, right.
From now on, like we do with LVC. A great French actor who was in a lot of spy movies and gangster movies. I can never pronounce his name, so I apologize to his family and friends. But anyway, Frank Wolff is in this, the great Klaus Kinski, Luigi Pistilli, Vanetta McGee, who's usually in blaxploitation movies, and Mario Brega makes an appearance. And you know the story, Silence, played by JLT, whose vocal cords have been slashed by sadistic bounty hunters, defends a young widow and a group of outlaws against a gang of bounty hunters in the winter of 1898. And as a grim, tense struggle unfolds, the outlaws are only doing what they must to survive, while the law is represented by inept sheriff, played by Frank Wolff. And the sadistic bounty killer is led Tiger by Klaus Kinski, who kills the poor because he enjoys it. Silence is hired by Pauline Middleton to revenge the killing of her husband, by Luigi Pistilli and Tiger, but unfortunately things don't go as planned, Tom. Although there is an alternate ending, right,
I was
Tom?
going to say, yeah, it depends on which version you watch.
Exactly. One of the great films of the genre, two different endings, because the first one was quite depressing. You're like, nah, really? And one of the best scores ever by Ennio Morricone. Definitely one of my favorites. I enjoy the snow. It's a nice backdrop. And the print, if you can see it, is just, it's a great cinematography. So it's worth the watch, even though Frank Wolff isn't really in it that much, Tom.
Yeah, he's in it now and then, but again, if you watch the second version, he comes riding in and saves the day at the end of the movie, which is like, it's almost a slap in the face if you see the original. It just goes over the top with him coming to the rescue.
Right. Another slow motion kind of peck and paw ending, Tom.
Yep.
Right. So our next film here on a tribute to Frank Wolff with two Fs. We discussed this film already. It's Once Upon a Time in the West. I will show the poster one more time. And I already read what it was all about, and we already know the story. And Frank Wolff meets his demise kind of pretty early on. And he's married to Claudia Cardinal, and of course takes a bullet from Frank's gang, and then his land goes up for sale. What do you want to add to this about Frank's participation, Tom?
Well, the only thing, both Woody and Frank are in this, and I mean, how many films have we talked about already with Frank being in it? 6 or 7? And yet this was Woody's first Italian Western. So one was active over there for almost a decade, while the other one just showed up. But
right. I showed a
both of them
picture
had
of
pivotal
Frank.
roles.
Let's see if I can find it. I misplaced it, but I showed a picture of Frank from the beginning. I think I showed this picture at the beginning, Tom.
When we were doing the biography.
Yeah, or of him, yeah. So even if that's not from the same movie, it's a similar look.
Yep. He looks like the same guy in God Forgives I Don't, the big
Right.
mutton chop, sideburns and the mustache.
Right, this is the same
Where he
look
doesn't
always
have the
has.
mustache, he looks like a completely different person.
Well, yeah, he does, especially in those the last of the Bad Men, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, let's move on to another film that he's in, and I actually call this the B-side to Five Man Army. It's of course the great film Kill Them All and Come Back Alone with Chuck Connors, and let's take a look at that poster. Well, that's a later poster, but still, look, they try to make the rifleman as the star,
Well, of course.
which is funny. It's a 68 Italian-Spanish co-production, also known as Go Kill Everybody and Come Back Alone, Matalo si vuelve, and Amazzali tutti e torno solo is the Italian. Of course, it's by Enzo G. Castellari again, Chuck Connors, Frank Wolff, Franco City, or is it Chitty, Tom?
You say it. You say Chitty. I say City.
Right? Leo Anchors, Ken Wood, the famous Ken Wood, Robert Widmark, Tom, no relation to...
That's Roberto Del Agua.
Right. Who's still with us, Tom.
Yeah, he's still alive. Yep.
Right. And Hercules Cortez. The story, I reviewed it, I think, before. Chuck Connors is hired by a Confederate general to carry out a raid on a Union stronghold and steal the $1 million worth of gold coins hidden there amongst an arsenal of dynamite. Clyde recruits a troop of 5 unsavory characters to assist him in the quest, and with the occasional help of Captain Lynch, played by Frank Wolff, without the mustache, sans mustache, Tom.
Exactly.
And the gang set about infiltrating the fort, grabbing the treasure, and making their escape. All, of course, does not go strictly to plan. Once again, Tom, isn't everybody killed one by one?
Yeah, they all get greedy. Of course, they all want the gold and not just to share. So they all start turning against each other.
Right. And they all betraying each other in order to get their hands on the gold. Very magnificent Seven-like, even though it isn't the Magnificent Seven.
Yep.
They all have a special skill that's aided to the heist. And excellent score by Damasi again, Tom.
Yeah, and this is one of my favorite Castellari films because just in the beginning credits, the action already starts, and it's just nonstop action all the way to the end. When you want to talk about a movie with slow points, this doesn't have any.
Right. It's a fast-moving film. It's very enjoyable.
Yep.
So anyway, let's move on to another Frank Wolff spaghetti western. Not really a spaghetti western per se, but at the time it was one of the earliest documentaries about spaghetti westerns, Tom.
Yeah, this was mentioned several times in several of the early books written about spaghetti westerns, called Westerns Italian Style. And Frank actually, what he did was he made home movies of the westerns that he was in, and they compiled all the footage that he did and made a documentary movie out of it, adding some footage, and he narrates it. So to me, it's a really fun thing to watch because it shows some of the actors. It shows Corbucci doing The Great Silence, and the town said in Italy they didn't have any snow, so they covered the ground with shaving cream, and it comes out of a fire hose. So I mean, it's a really fun movie to watch.
Where is this available, Tom?
It's on 3 different DVDs as a documentary. It's on Cox Media's Spara Gringo Spara. It's also on Blue Underground's Run Man Run, and it's available as an extra on Canal DVD, The Great Silence. So if you have any of those or are looking for any of them, it's an extra on there.
Okay. So yeah, it looks great. I almost have every spaghetti western there is, Tom. I don't think I grabbed this one from any of those companies. So I might have to borrow yours.
I've got it on one of them.
Right. So anyway, it looks fun. I love home movies and stuff like that. So to see home movies of Frank Wolff, that must be really cool to see. Anyway, so let's go to our last Frank Wolff spaghetti western, and it's I Am Sartana, Your Angel of Death, also known as Sartana the Gravedigger. It's got many titles. I'll Dig Your Grave, I Am Sartana, Your Grave Digger, My Name is Sartana, but you can call me Tom Betts. There's a lot of titles it goes by. But the one that we know it, as I said, is I Am Sartana, Your Angel of Death. So let's show the poster. Oh, really? Where's the poster? Well, let's just go to Frank. I've shown the poster so many times. We can just go to Frank. And it's a 1969 Italian film production directed by Giuliano Carnemeo again. And it stars the great Gianni Garco, Frank Wolff, Klaus Kinski, Renato Baldini, Ettore Manni, Gordon Mitchell, Sal Borges, and Werner Hasselmann. And a gang of criminals storm a well-fortified bank in a town in the West. After eliminating the guards, they make a haul of $300,000. The director of the bank, Sims, the only survivor of the massacre, recognizes Sartana as the leader of the bandits, and therefore a bounty is placed on his head. But the real Sartana, Garco, is far away from the scene of the crime and therefore not possibly guilty of any of the participation, but puts in place a plot to capture the real culprits, aided by a clever thief played by Bunny Ben, Frank Wolff. He arrives in the town and begins to investigate. After skillfully avoiding the attacks with skill, he's able to discover the truth. The sheriff is the head of the gang, and Sartana enters the bank. I got the poster right there. And enters the bank, and it would be nice if I found was I was. Enters the bank and with Buddy, and the two obtain a confession from Sims, who organized the coup with the sheriff while blaming Sartana, who now takes the $300,000 and leaves with Buddy Ben. Tom, you're not this isn't one of your favorite Sartana films?
It's okay. I mean, I know Chris Casey hates the character Buddy Ben. I mean, the names of some of these guys, but most of the supporting cast members, Kinski and Wolff, play characters with like inferiority complexes. Kinski loses everything he ever does as far as betting on something, and Buddy Ben is used as an accomplice by Garco, but
he's like a sidekick, Tom.
Yeah, he's a sidekick. He just does errands, basically.
Right. And I'm not really a big fan of that per se, but I enjoy the movie.
Oh, sure. Garco in anything is good, yeah.
Especially Sartana, but it is one of the lesser Sartanas. It's, but it's still great regardless of how you look at it. So Frank Wolff, there's his, body of work in spaghetti westerns. Great actor, seemed like a nice guy. Tragic ending to his life, like so many spaghetti western actors. But there you have it. So I hope we've mentioned a few films from both Woody Strode and Frank Wolff that perhaps you didn't know about, that you might not recheck out and see again. So we've done part 1, we've done part 2, and now it's time for part 3 of our show, where we let Tom take over, and he shares his book of the week, his autograph of the week, his poster addict, and the weekly news. So let's start with the first one. Without further ado, here is book of the week.
Okay, this one's called Italian Westerns. That's it. The Essential Films.
Wait, let's
And
show it. I think you've showed this once before, Tom.
Have I? Okay. It's by Stephen Hoover. And no pictures, a few pictures, small ones. But it's just a recap of spaghetti westerns. It's fun to watch, to read something that you've seen all the films and get someone else's opinion on them. So that's the book of the week.
No worries. I hope your autograph and posters aren't ones you showed before.
Well, some of the posters may be.
Okay. Well, anyway, let's get now to autograph of the week.
This week's is the great Mickey Hargitay. I don't think I've shown this one before, but this
You have
one I
not?
got when he was at Laughlin, Nevada for 2 days at a Western festival that Gordon Mitchell and Mickey attended. We got to spend 2 days with them at their booth. And so I was able to get an autograph from him at that
What'd you
point.
talk about with him, Tom?
Everything about his career.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great. His wife, this was, of course, this was after Jane. His wife, Ellen, was really, really sweet. And she sat with us and gave us information while he was busy talking to fans and stuff like that. It was
Cool.
a great time.
But I would have asked him about Bloody Pit of Horror,
Yeah, of course.
which is a classic film. Anyway, so let's move on to Tom's next segment. And that is, of course, Tom's poster addict. And let's see, when Tom gets his posters, this is where he goes to.
All right, let me get my lifeline hooked up here, Jay, so that it doesn't get out. So it gets
Okay,
out
remember,
of the way.
Tom, keep the tears and rips to a minimum.
No, I've got them already open. So I
Oh,
should
okay,
be
that
all right.
helps.
Okay, we're not in any particular order, maybe reverse order of what we talked about on the show. But there's a Sartana poster.
Right? I think you've showed that before, Tom.
Yeah, we probably have with Garco.
Right, okay,
Kinski.
that's a nice
But
one.
there's Buddy Ben. That's Frank. And then we've got Kill 'Em All, Come Back Alone.
Now, that's one I haven't seen before, Tom.
Okay, now there's Frank up there without the mustache. Looks completely different. So, got that one. Then we've got the Japanese, Great Silence.
Wait, that's the one I showed earlier, Tom.
Yep, and what they did was, that was cute. They put information on the back of the posters. Of course, I don't know what it says, but, you know,
We know why. You know why, Tom? Those are pullouts from Japanese magazines, Tom.
probably. Now, you tell me what language this was in. It came, I saw, I shot.
Let me see the title, Tom. I'll a little lower. Right, it could be Greek, Tom.
See if there's anything at the bottom. Nope, I don't think it's Greek.
Oh,
Probably
maybe it's
Scandinavian or
Pakistani,
something.
Tom.
Could be.
Wow,
You're
that's a
right.
nice one, Tom.
Yeah, beautiful artwork on that one.
See, it's
And
no
then
fair. You
this
already
one.
have them open. Wow. Of course, that's the obligatory God forgives, I don't.
Yep. And unfortunately, he's not photo pictured there, and the Terence Hill character looks nothing like Terence Hill, but you know, this is early in the career. Now, this one is different, Jay. This is Last of the Bad Men, but it's it says Rome, but look at it's like a press book,
Wow.
fold out. So multiple pages, information on the film. That was really cool. Um, you mentioned Stranger in Town also being called A Dollar in the Teeth Between the Teeth. This would have been a variety ad again, like I had scalps
That is
last
nice,
week.
Tom.
And then we've got a few dollars for Django,
Yes.
and he's mentioned on there, Frank Wolff.
Oh,
Ringo, The Face of Revenge, Belgium.
of course, Tom. You know they use that same Anthony Stephan look for every
I know,
poster.
don't they? Yeah, exactly. Shalico. Haven't shown that one before.
No, you haven't. That's a first.
How about Boots Hill?
With the original air times, Tom.
Yeah, exactly.
When they were screening.
That's when they wrote it on there, yep. Of course, these were supposed to go back to the distributor, and they never did.
There's Chuck
Unholy
Moll.
Four. Chuck Moll, Unholy Four. There's Woody. And then we've got really thin paper.
Oh, that's been through the ringer.
Yeah.
That's a
Woody's
nice.
over there
Yeah,
on
you know
the
what? That's
side.
the only. That's like the only poster for that film.
I think so. Everyone was like that same.
I mean,
showing the
I
entire
have
cast.
it, but I'm not a fan because it's just plain orange.
Oh yeah. And then We Are No Angels, autographed by Paul Smith.
Nice.
I saw him at the Hollywood Collectors Show. And that is the posters of the week.
Fantastic, Tom. And now Tom brings you an update in the news of the week and what's happening in spaghetti westerns.
Okay, there's no obits this week. How about that?
Yay.
But there is a new German book called Winnetou Melody about Martin Botcher biography, which is by Rainer Bohler, published in Germany with 270 pages, released December 6th. This is the third revision of his original book, which was released in 2005. Then there's a new Spanish book called Francisco Prosper, Creador de Ilusiones, which is Creator of Illusions, by author Domingo Lizacano, published by Area 51 Editions in Spanish, 238 pages, 400 color and black and white photos. It's now available. Who is Francisco Prosper? He was a set builder, model expert, film director, screenwriter, much more. So he created model sets that were filmed like Bava used to create an illusion of something in the distance, and it was a model. He worked on 9 Euro westerns that I could find: Sheriff of Fractured Jaw, Juanito, Custer of the West, Shalico, 100 Rifles, Valley of Guanji, Cannon for Cordoba, Red Sun, and our favorite, The White, the Yellow, and the Black. Also a new German DVD Blu-ray release, Django ein Sarg voller Blut, which is A Moment to Kill. 67, directed by Anthony Ascott, starring George Hilton, Horst Frank, Walter Barnes, Lonnie Von Frudel. It's released by B Spree Classics. Contains 2 discs, the DVD and a Blu-ray. It's in Italian, English, and German languages with a running time of 92 minutes. It was released December 10th, 2021. Also, second German Blu-ray release, Zwi ha noch den Putz, which is Boot Hill. Again, Woody Strode, directed by Giuseppe Colizzi, starring Bud Spencer and Terence Hill. 69, released by Coke, contains 3 discs, 2 Blu-rays, and a CD with German and Italian languages. German subtitles. Running time is 100 minutes. Extras include cut versions of the film, a booklet, trailers, and picture gallery. This was released December 16th. And last but not least, a new Italian CD, Lo Cimavano Trinita. the 50th anniversary edition by composer Franco Michelizzi, starring Bud Spencer, Terence Hill, Farley Granger on the Digit Movies label. Number DDJ25DLX contains 2 CDs and a 16-page booklet. It was released December 13th. There's the 3 books, covers on the 3 books, and there's the 2 Blu-ray DVDs. And that is the weekly news.
The weekly news by the great Tom Betts. So anyway, that brings another great episode to its conclusion. And I want to thank everybody, all our loyal fans out there on YouTube and Facebook and Spotify and Anchor and iTunes, where you can find the best of audio versions. I think over 20 episodes are available on iTunes, Anchor, and Spotify. But we do have a kind of a little special announcement. Today was the end of season 2. It was a short season, 15 episodes. We had 50, I think, the first season. We should have actually made that into 2 seasons, but that's fine. So with season 3, there's going to be a little bit of a change. I'm actually going to be taking an extended hiatus. Got a film coming up that I've got to do and a lot of editing. So Tom's going to take over the reins, and it'll be the Tom Betts Show. But anyway, still be the Spaghetti Westerns podcast, but we will continue with season 3 next Saturday, Christmas Day. Tom and I might tape that. So, but it'll be available for everyone to see. Of course, all of these are archived. So if you miss an episode, what Tom?
Question: are you going to take Gertrude with you?
Gertrude's coming. She's actually driving the bus, Tom.
Good luck.
Right, the bus to Almeria. But so Tom will be just taking over hosting duties. He'll be doing the same segments that we have, and he'll be doing film reviews. I won't be here. But Tom, you're in good hands with Tom. So it'll be like the Westerns all'Italiana version of a podcast. So it'll be great. I look forward to seeing it. And we want to thank all of you for watching. And you're a very loyal fan base, and we're here to bring you all information about spaghetti westerns, good and bad. So, Tom, what do we say to everybody?
Adios, amigos.
Tom says adios, amigos, and I say, for the last time, adios, compañeros.